What up, what up, what up? This is Puck Buds with Tim and Dylan. It may be the middle of the playoffs, but we're talking the NHL hot stove as well as EA's absolutely horrendous. Put Alex Ovechkin on the cover of NHL 21. So let's get to the headlines. Speaking of Ovi, his coach Todd Reirden was fired earlier this week following the Capitals getting bounced from the playoffs in 5 games by the New York Islanders. Reirden, who took over after the Caps won the Cup in 2018, had a 4-8 postseason record, which includes two first round exits in both of his seasons behind the bench. Washington has not yet named a new coach. One coach that did not get fired was the Penguins' Mike Sullivan. Sullivan was on many people's short lists for Coach of the Year before the play stoppage, leading Pittsburgh to the 5th best record in the East, despite long-term injuries to Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Jake Guentzel, among others. Following the team's play-in loss to Montreal, they did clean house, firing all the other assistants, and they made the first major trade in what I suppose we could call the offseason, even though there are still games being played, of course. The Penguins reacquired Kasperi Kapanen in exchange for the 15th overall pick in the coming draft and for Filip Hallander. A lot of people are saying the Leafs won this trade, and some are even saying the Pens got fleeced. So, Dylan, what do you got on this deal?
Yeah, so this is one of those ones where it's going to take a little bit to digest. It's not a one for one where you can just weigh the pros and cons with those two guys. This is a big one. In total, it was a 6-player deal plus a draft pick. So we're looking at Penguins receiving Kapanen, Pontus Aberg, and Jesper Lindgren. On the flip side, Toronto gets Evan Rodriguez, Filip Hallander, and David Warsofsky. And Toronto also gets a 2020 first rounder. So yeah, a lot to digest here, but I really think I like what Toronto did here with Kyle Dubas. I think Kapanen is certainly replaceable. He's a decent player, good young player, but I don't know how high his ceiling really is. I mean, he's been okay. He's put up 90 points in 202 career games, so third line numbers, but he definitely has that speed. But I think he's replaceable with a guy like Nick Robertson, who's going to come up, and he was pretty good in the playoffs, put up a ton of points in the OHL. I mean, last year playing for Peterborough, he put up 86 points in 46 games. So do the math. That's just below 2 points a game in the OHL, which is arguably the best amateur league in the world. I also like how they get that first round pick back in Toronto because Patrick Marleau was a Carolina Hurricane for like 20 minutes. That was the deal. They exchanged Patrick Marleau's contract. They gave that and put that on the Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for also giving up their first round pick in 2020. So now they have that pick back. It's a 15th overall pick in the first round. So I do like this trade for Toronto.
I'll tell you here's how it's a guarantee that Toronto wins this deal. And it's not about the first round pick, although I'll get back to that a little bit later. It's all about Filip Hallander. If Filip Hallander can make the jump from the Swedish Elite League to the Maple Leafs in this season or the next season and immediately be a plug and play third or fourth line center, a guy who Sheldon Keefe, every night when he's setting up his lineup, can put this guy in and be comfortable that he's going to do his job and he's going to be fine. He doesn't have to worry about him. Some people think he's capable of doing that. Now, he's only 20, so he has some time to grow and develop the game, but obviously there have been players in Sweden and Russia who people have expected to be able to play in the NHL and haven't. So if Hollander's able to do that, then you could say he could immediately replace Kasperi Kapanen. Obviously, he's not a winger, and he can't necessarily jump up into the top 6 the way that Kapanen can, but you're still able to save $3.2 million. What I think people are a little bit overvaluing is that first round pick. And I guess that comes from a sense of people who are saying that Pittsburgh got fleeced. People that are saying that Pittsburgh got fleeced because they gave up the first round pick, the 15th overall pick, I think are overvaluing first round picks a little bit. Now, So the pick will be number 15, as I said. And are there going to be 15 players in this draft that are better than Kasperi Kapanen? Sure. But are they all going to be picked ahead of where Pittsburgh would have selected? Are all 15 of them going to go above pick number 15? I don't think so. I think people really overvalue draft picks because it's such a huge pool of players. You get them really cheap, and there's a real possibility that you get a diamond in the rough. For instance, in 2015, when the Islanders took Matthew Barzal at 16, and then the Senators took Thomas Chabot at 18. Those two guys are elite NHL players, and I think people are like, oh, well, they had the 15th overall pick. Like, you have the opportunity to get a guy for 3 years on the cheap. But the thing is, that 15th overall pick, you're not guaranteed to get a home run. You're not
Right.
guaranteed to get a stud. Like, for every Charlie McAvoy or Kyle Connor, there's a Brandon Perlini or a Nick Ritchie, guys who aren't worth the draft picks. So the thing with the 15th overall pick is you have to get the pick right. And that is so much easier said than done. So people that say that Pittsburgh got fleeced, I don't really see it that way. I think they're going to get exactly what they think they're going to get with Kasperi Kapanen. Penguins GM Jim Rutherford, he said, I don't think that this 15th overall guy is going to be able to help the Penguins in the window that they have, the way that Kapanen can. And the guy that gets 15th, he's not going to play in the NHL this coming year, more likely than not, unless he's David Pastrnak or whatever. And next year and the year after, he might, but probably you're looking at the end of year 2 or the beginning of year 3 before that guy has really reached his. You're sort of figure out whether or not he's going to be good or not. And the Penguins core is getting up there in age. I mean, Crosby's what, 34, 33, 34, and of getting out the year 2 on
33.
that, 33. So
Right.
you don't have that luxury to figure out whether or not the guy is going to fit. And I think that Toronto, the reason why it could end up working out for them is because despite sort of the sky is falling, everything sucks, we need to start winning now, the Maple Leafs do sort of have the benefit of the time. They're the three best players, Matthews, Marner, and John Tavares, are all under contract for multiple years, and the old guy on the farm, John Tavares, if you want to call him that, is however many years younger than Crosby. So I think you have time to wait to see if this first round pick is going to develop a lot more than Pittsburgh does because, well, let's be honest, they don't have that many young studs coming up where Crosby and Malkin are going to be able to pass the torch over them, and they're going to continue to compete for cups. So I think the win now attitude is what they have to do, unless they want to do a complete rebuild, which doesn't really make sense considering the two cornerstone guys I just mentioned. But I just think that you can't that 15th overall pick is not going to change the fortunes of the Penguins. And yeah, it might seem like it's a bit steep for a guy like Kapanen, but Kapanen is, what you're going to get. So I don't think that it's that. I don't think the Penguins got fleeced is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I got you. I think that's definitely reasonable. I really liked what you said about Hollander because, I mean, I'm telling you that I've always thought some of those European leagues get undervalued. And Austin Matthews, I mean, he decided to forego his college eligibility and didn't play major junior either. He went over to Switzerland, played in their top tier league. I think he was around a point a game, but he for a young guy, I think playing in those leagues, I mean, you're playing against men. That's the difference. Is the difference between playing in one of those European leagues, the top tier leagues, is that if you decide to play a major junior, whether it be the Quebec League or even if you want to stay in the NCAA, there's an age limit there, and something about playing against grown men like Hollander has, and he's done well the last couple years. In total, he's got 35 points in 72 games. So that really holds a lot of weight for me. The fact that he's playing against seasoned professionals over in a country that plays some pretty decent hockey in Sweden. And yeah, he's really a three zone player, and the Maple Leafs could certainly use that. We all know that they're certainly they're missing those two-dimensional guys that can really get the job done in all four corners of the ice. I also liked how you mentioned the first round pick. I mean, a lot of people seem to be putting a lot of weight on that, and they
Yeah,
usually do carry a good amount of weight in
I
trades. I think you see a lot of weight put on a first rounder a lot nowadays, and I definitely agree with what you're saying about yeah, it's easier said than done to really grab that 15th best player because nowadays anyone can look back and say, oh well Matthew Barzell, how could someone not taken him at seventh, and he went 15th or what was he 16, I think, after the Bruins went 15th. It just proves the point that the first round, it's something that you can look at in hindsight so easily and say, oh, we should have taken this guy at this pick, or you can look back and you can crucify any team, any GM. That's the
yeah,
reality of it. Or they can look like a genius based off something that was, in all honesty, luck.
yeah.
And
So
yeah, so the first round is definitely it's different than what people think because if you look at the first round from let's say 10 years ago, you'd expect to see a lot more stars than you do. People have this connotation with the first rounders that they must be a superstar and they're probably going to hold that level of play up for their entire career. Well, a lot of them get phased out pretty quickly, and it's interesting after they sign that pro contract. Let's not forget a lot of them are still 18 years old and have a lot of maturing to do, both physically and mentally. So the draft is something where it's definitely a funny situation for some teams.
well, I would say just my guess is that I would say about 30% of the people that are drafted right around 15 are going to be better than Kapanen. I would say maybe 40 are going to be similar, either a little bit better or a little bit worse, and then you're probably going to have 30% that are worse. So if Hollander can't make the jump over to the NHL and he is not a guy that can play every day and serve a role on the Maple Leafs, if it ends up just being a sort of a one for one, if you will, ends up being Kapanen for that 15th overall pick, I think that that would end up being a great trade for Pittsburgh because, like I said earlier, they know what they're going to get with Kapanen.
They don't really need Kapanen to be a superstar because I mean, I don't know if this is what they'll do, but look at what Sidney Crosby has done with minor leaguers called up from the AHL to play on his line. I mean, a lot of people will find success in Pittsburgh just because of who they have on that team's core. You're either playing with Crosby, Malkin, or you're getting breakout passes from Letang. I mean, it's an easy team to find success on because they have players that make players around them better. So I think Kapanen can slide in there and find some success, maybe even more so than he found in Toronto.
I definitely think so. It was interesting because Rutherford said he's going to put him in a top six role, and obviously he hasn't really had a top six role on Toronto, having to play behind Nylander and Mitch Marner. So maybe it's a case where a change of scenery, a change of line mates, you would have to assume that he's going to play with Crosby only because of the chemistry that and the numbers that Malkin put up with Brian Rust last year. Rust had a career year by far,
Oh yeah,
but easily is the best year of his
he's a good
career.
player.
Yeah, so you would think that they won't break that lineup, and unless they're gonna put Kapanen on the other side and have him play left wing, you would assume he's gonna play right wing. It would be Gensel, Crosby, and Kapanen. And if that's the case, that is a real opportunity for Kasperi Kapanen. And who knows? I mean, I remember last year when Vancouver traded a first round pick for JT Miller, and everyone was saying, "Oh wow, like they traded a first round pick. Vancouver was bad in 18-19, and they traded a first round pick in what was the equivalent of a salary dump for Tampa. Vancouver got fleeced. Tampa robbed them blind. And then it turns out Miller was over a point a game. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be Kapanen, but I guess I'm not saying that's going to be Kapanen either. Like, what's stopping him from having a career year alongside the best player of the generation? I mean, there have been crazier things that have happened than that. Well, another guy who might be on the move is Johnny Gaudreau. This was the second straight year that the Calgary Flames failed to make it out of the first round. Calgary's got some, let's just say, some bad contracts. The ones that sticks out right away, Milan Lucic at 5.25 for another 3 years. Michael Backlund, 31-year-old center, 5.35 million until 2023-24. You got Mark Giordano at 6.75 for another 2 years. Granted, Norris Trophy winner, but he's also 36. And it really felt like this year that this team needs to make a move. They need to shake something up because last year they won the West. They had the best record in the West, and then they lose to Colorado in 5 games. And then this year against Dallas, did they get up to a 2-0 lead in that series? I think they were up 2-0 in that series, and then immediately they just sort of caved. And you saw it in Game 6 when they got up. It was 3-0 before any of us even blinked, and all of a sudden Dallas went on a ridiculous run, and it ended up being a blowout in favor of the Stars. So Johnny Hockey has not been great in the playoffs, and he seems like the logical guy to go. And there have been a lot of rumors about him. He's addressed some of the rumors. He said he wants to play with for a winner, but that he really likes Calgary. But at the end of the day, this is a business, so anything could happen. Johnny Gaudreau has 446 career points in 464 career games, so pretty much a point per game player. The 2016-17 Lady Byng Award winner. So, Dylan, should Calgary move on from this guy? And I guess we'll get to who could be potential suitors later, but first, just should they move on from him?
Yeah, it's always tough to move on from someone who, you always envision your organization winning around. There's no question that 3, 4 years ago, whenever he signed that last deal, which had some controversy around it, around the signing of it, negotiations, Calgary definitely signed him to that $6.75 million deal, thinking that this will be a huge part of their core that would hopefully, if not win the Stanley Cup, take them far into the playoffs, which that
Has
hasn't
not
really
happened.
happened.
Safe to say that has not
Um,
happened.
yeah, so I believe the deal it was either 6 or 7 years for 6 3/4, so $6.75 million cap hit. It goes until 2022. So, I mean, you know, take that as you will, but I think that's a lot to eat for a guy who it's an interesting situation because I won't say you can't win with them because they've had some decent teams in the regular season. You mentioned his points per game. It's right at .97 throughout his career, but then in the playoffs it goes down to .63. So that's about that's a 34% drop off. That's real tough. You don't want to see that out of your star. And yeah, I think sometimes you'll be hesitant to give away somebody who puts up a good amount of points. I mean, just a couple of years ago, he put up 98 points in 2018-19. But the thing is, you gotta kind of, I think, keep your eyes on the prize in sports and remember that your goal isn't to buy players, it's to buy wins, and that just doesn't seem to be happening. So I didn't think I'd say it, but yeah, I do think trading Johnny Gaudreau could be potentially the wake up call and the shake that this team needs.
Yeah, I think they should probably move him, but at the same time, I think that the team that's going to get him, assuming he goes to the right place, is going to look at the deal and be like, "Wow, we just robbed him blind." And here's why I say this: I don't think that Johnny Gaudreau is a number one in the league. I don't think he can lead an offense onto a Stanley Cup championship team. I just think that some players are built to be frontmen, are built to lead the pack, and I don't want to say elevate. Well, I guess I'll say that they are the type of guys that elevate in the playoffs. It might sound like a little bit of a cliche, but Johnny Gaudreau definitely doesn't do that. And I think that if he is much more of a complementary player, he's he'll be I don't want to say he'll be better because his stats are already pretty damn good, but I think he'll help the team win a lot more. And I just think that Calgary needs to shake something up and to keep going with this guy as your best offensive player. I guess you could argue that Matthew Tkachuk is your best offensive player now, but even so, I mean they both play the left side and are left-handed shots, I should say. So they're not playing together. So really, I mean, the last 2 years it's been Gaudreau, Monahan, and Lindholm. So yeah, Johnny Gaudreau has been your number one offensive guy, and I think for both both parties it's time for a change of scenery.
I think it's very true what you said about whatever team gets him is probably going to feel like they hit the jackpot because those regular season numbers, they're definitely there. I mean, that's almost a point a game. There's not many players like that in the league. I mean, obviously, I use that term loosely because there are a good amount of players that'll put up a point a game, but if you look at the percentage of the players in the NHL that can do that, it's a very small percent. You know, it's few and far between guys who can produce at a point a game level. So I think he's great trade bait because those numbers are certainly there. And then also, you're right about he's not going to drive a team. I think he's a very modern hockey player. He's very small, shifty, creative, but I don't see him as someone who really elevates his game as the games get bigger. That you did say it's kind of a cliche, but it's something we hear a lot in hockey, and it's something you see certain guys do in hockey. And he doesn't seem to be one of those, but I think he could be a great supplement for a team's depth. And certainly in the regular season, he'd probably be a huge help. But in the postseason, if he's not the driving force, which I don't think he should be, I think he could be a big help to any team heading down the stretch. Even though he's not really the most playoff designed player, I think he could be a good supplement.
Yeah, he's definitely not the most playoff designed player, that's for sure. I mean, the big knock on Johnny Gaudreau his entire career is that he's too small, and he's sort of proven those doubters wrong. But I think in the playoffs it does become an issue. You play the same team potentially 7 times, and as series goes on, it becomes so much more physical, so much more of a physical battle. And I think that when teams are
Yep.
saying when they're, I mean, your best defensemen go up against the team's number one line. So when the best defensemen are studying how to stop Johnny Gaudreau, I think it's a little bit easier because of how small he is. But saying that, I think that if he goes to a team that has one, two, three other really good offensive threats, I think he becomes an absolutely lethal player, and I think that is included in the playoffs too. What this really reminds me of is Phil Kessel in Toronto. Phil Kessel, the
Wow. Yeah.
Leafs traded an arm and a leg for him from the Bruins, thinking he was going to be the savior. Obviously, Calgary drafted Gaudreau, but when Toronto gave Kessel the keys to the train, trains don't use keys, do they?
No, they
When
don't. Keys to the
Toronto,
city.
yeah, when Toronto gave Kessel keys to the car, keys to the city, whatever you want to say. The he put up decent numbers, but the team lost and they continued to lose. And then it became sort of a situation where it was like, well, we can't really keep this guy anymore because we're not really going anywhere. And then they traded him to the Penguins, and all of a sudden they win the Stanley Cup because he's on the third line. If you have a guy like Phil Kessel or Johnny Gaudreau on your third line, forget about it. Oh, forget about it. That team is going to be competing for a Stanley Cup. So I think that's sort of why it would be good for Johnny Gaudreau to leave. And I think at the same time, it's like, yeah, that could very well happen. And Calgary might end up be watching Johnny Gaudreau's new team lift the cup come in some June. But are you really just going to keep bashing your head against the wall and hope you get a different result? I I don't think so. So I think for both parties, it's time for him to move on.
It's funny. It seems like this. I love how you made that analogy with the Phil Kessel trade because I feel like Johnny Gaudreau's time in Calgary could have a similar legacy to Phil Kessel's time in Toronto in the sense that you think about those time periods and those players in those situations, and you kind of have a negative connotation to it. I mean, Kessel's time in Toronto, that didn't go well. The team didn't win. He had some issues with the media. Same with Gaudreau, he never won. But so you have that bad taste in your mouth, and then you look at their stats, and
Yeah.
you're right, man. Kessel had some good years in Toronto, and it's almost like he just got a bad rap. And Gaudreau had some great years in Calgary, and I think the legacy will be the same in the sense that people have that negative connotation with their time in Toronto and Calgary in terms of Kessel and Gaudreau, but I feel like you look at their numbers, maybe the legacy shouldn't be so negative. It's just that they were unable to produce when they needed to produce, and that's a huge part of hockey because the playoffs are,
Playoffs are
there's a
everything.
lot that goes into them. There's a lot that goes into the playoffs outside of simply skill set. And Kessel was able to check off that box as a Stanley Cup champion in Pittsburgh 2 times, and yeah, I mean for that reason, I think Gaudreau could definitely benefit, as could Calgary, from moving him.
So I've got four potential suitors for Johnny Gaudreau, and mind you, I realistically I don't think it's going to take as much as you might think to get Johnny Gaudreau. Only because once a team sort of tells the league that they're ready to move on from a guy, they sort of lose the leverage in a deal. And you
Yep.
see it a lot. You see it a lot when like they like announce guys. They're saying, okay, this guy's probably gonna move, and then you end up seeing, and you hear about a really high asking price, and then you end up seeing what it actually is, and it's fairly low. And I think that's what's going to be the case with Gaudreau. I think he's going to go for a little bit less than you think, but he still comes with a what 6.75 cap hit, which is no small feat, and not everybody can afford that. So the four teams I have as potential suitors, three from the East, because he says he wants to go to the. Those are the rumors. The rumors is that he wants to go to the East. So I have the Rangers, Boston, Colorado, not from the East, obviously. Maybe the wild card is New Jersey. New Jersey because he's from New Jersey. They have some cap room. They have some young pieces. Colorado, Colorado's got some room after after trading Tyson Barrie last year. They saved a lot of salary. They don't have to sign Cale Makar this offseason. They can wait another one. Obviously, they're gonna have to sign him, and he's gonna be a pretty penny. But still, you can work out a way where you could get Gaudreau. Boston, Boston to be contingent, obviously, on them not re-signing Torrey Krug, but I think there's a shot that they don't. I think there's a shot that they don't because Boston is really deep defensively, and if Krug decides he's going to leave and go to Detroit, all of a sudden you have some free money, and they need middle six scoring, and Johnny Gaudreau would be middle six scoring. And then New York, just because they have a lot of room, they have some young guys on short deals. They have some trade chips too. And then you got Alexis Lafreniere coming in this coming year, and he wouldn't have to be on all of those teams, except maybe the Devils. He wouldn't have to be the number one guy. He could be a role player, and I think he could thrive. So, is there anyone you can think of? And of those four, which one do you think would be the best fit?
So answering both those questions, the team I was thinking of and the team that I also think is the best fit out of those four is New Jersey. When you mentioned that, I kind of chuckled because you mentioned how it was kind of a wild card for you, but to me, I like when
Well,
players
I was only
incorporate.
the only reason I was saying that it was a wild card was because, from all accounts, Gaudreau wants to go to a winner. Now everybody says that, so maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Did Taylor Hall say he wanted to go to a winner? That clearly didn't happen. So that's why I said kind of a wild card as the Devils, but
Yep. And
he
I just like,
could happen.
yeah, oh, it could happen, and I like when guys give kind of a nod to their hometown. Jason Spezza, he wanted to play in Toronto this year before he retired to play in his hometown or somewhere near there. I think he's from Brampton, Ontario. Gaudreau, someone from somewhere in New Jersey, and who knows, maybe he has that loyalty. I don't know the guy personally. I did hear that he wants to go to a contender, but hockey players use all these cliches, you know
I
that,
think
and it's tough
is
to get a
anybody
read
ever
on
gonna
them sometimes.
is anybody ever going to say that they don't want to go to a contender? Like, oh yeah,
Right,
I'll just go to the Cleveland
exactly.
Browns. That's all
You
I'm
know
going
what
to
was
do.
yeah, you know what was funny is I liked how you touched on how he was saying, "Oh, I love the people of Calgary and everything." When he said that, when I watched that clip of him getting asked about a potential trade, it just sounded like the most cliche hockey player answer.
Oh yeah,
Just,
oh yeah.
oh, I want to go to a contender. I love the people here. They've certainly treated me well, and I've enjoyed my time. I just don't think you can put too much stock into what a hockey player says. It just seems like all small talk, and
He's also
I
not.
think that was an
He's
example
also
of it.
what? He's also 27 and not 37. So it's not like he's
Right.
someone like Joe Thornton who says, "I want to go to a winner," and he's sort of shown, he's proven himself. Well, actually, that's not the right word. His legacy is cemented. Where if he says he wants to go to a winner, you trade him to a winner. If
Yep.
if Calgary's getting rid of Johnny Hockey, they're gonna get rid of Johnny Hockey. And yeah, sure, they it could be nice for him to trade him to a team that could win, but they're gonna do what's best for Calgary. So, like I said, not much stock into it. Do you think he would do well in New Jersey? Do you think it would be a situation similar to the Taylor Hall?
I think New Jersey's tough to get a read on because Taylor Hall, I mean, you look at his point totals, he was kind of all over the place in New Jersey. He had that one huge year where he won the Hart Trophy, and they made the playoffs basically just because of him. Like, in my lifetime, that's the playoff run. I think they got eliminated in the first round, but that's the one I
Sure, they
remember as a
did.
team making it to the playoffs just off of one guy. I can't think of another example quite like that because if I remember correctly, he won that Hart Trophy because mainly the argument was he should win it because he had, I think, 40 more points than the guy with the second most points on his team, which was rookie
Wow.
Nico Hischier at the time. And yeah, it's something like if he had that one incredible year, but they're just tough to get a read on because I thought they would take a big step forward this year. Like most people, I expected more out of Jack Hughes, and I expected more out of PK Subban too. He's had those back problems, and it's really slowed him down. So I think Gaudreau could be a big help to that team. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't really like their defense too much either, though. So I think they would still have struggles even with Johnny Gaudreau. It's just something that I thought of because they have the cap space, and like I said, he is
He's
from
from
New
there,
Jersey,
yeah.
so I put some stock into that.
Yeah, I think for Johnny Gaudreau's sake, he shouldn't go to New Jersey. Obviously, doesn't have any say in that. I think if he gets traded to New Jersey, he's going to get traded again pretty soon. I mean, their roster isn't that great. I mean, yeah, you got pretty good cornerstones with Hughes and Heishier. Hughes, obviously, you got to assume he's going to just start playing better and better as he
He'll be good.
gets stronger and older. But I mean, the rest of the lineup, the rest of the team's pretty weak. So I don't think for Johnny Gaudreau's sake you'd want to go there. I think the other teams,
Yep.
the Rangers, I think could definitely be a possibility. They got a lot of prospects. They also have probably are going to have to trade one of their right defensemen because they just with Truba, Adam Fox, and Tony DeAngelo. Just because both Fox and DeAngelo need a new contract, and eventually they're not going to be able to pay that. That's not in the coming years. That's not even in 2 years, but probably 3 years. By then, one of those guys probably has to go, and maybe that could be a potential trade. That would be a big piece. Obviously, on a team with Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin, Johnny Gaudreau as a potential second or third liner playing with one of those guys, or not playing with one of those guys, he would be just really added depth. Um, so I would say, and obviously Colorado's competing for a Stanley Cup. So there could be other teams. Some worse teams have a lot of room, a lot of cap space. Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa. So if he pisses anybody off in the Calgary organization, they could just ship him off there into the land of irrelevancy. But
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, too bad Jason Botterill's not there to give him a Jeff Skinner level contract, though.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if he went to Buffalo, he could sign what 8 years at 85 million.
8 years at whatever he wants if Jason
Yeah,
Botterill was still there. But now they have what's his name? They have Kevin Adams as the new GM, who, from what I understand, this is on a limb here, but I guess he worked in like accounting before. So
so he
it's
should
pretty
know
funny how they
money.
call Kevin from accounting and have him be the new GM. He did
Accounting
play in the
should be able
NHL. I
to.
should say that. He played in the
Okay.
NHL, but currently it was something like accounting or something, some average Joe style job like that, and it was pretty funny for that reason.
So the other news of the week, NHL 21 announced their cover athlete, and for the second time, it was Alexander Ovechkin. At the beginning of the show, I said it was a horrendous decision by EA, and how the hell do you put Alex Ovechkin as the cover athlete on NHL 21 again? Again. He was the first for the skill stick, I believe, in 2007. That was the first time they had the skill sticks.
That's a good
Obviously,
point.
where you shoot and check with the analog sticks for those who don't play the game, and they also had the old Capitals jerseys. So it's been a hot minute, but you don't put an athlete on the cover twice. Unless you're Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, you don't put an athlete on the game twice. Now, whoa, what about Jonathan Toews? Yeah, when you win 3 Stanley Cups, you get exceptions. So, and Patrick Kane was supposed to be on that cover, but stuff happened, so he didn't get on the cover. Why does Ovi get another cover? Why? He didn't break the goal record this year. He didn't do some crazy, unbelievable, out of this world craziness thing. I mean, yeah, he scored a lot of goals. He passed some pretty historic people. He's climbing up the charts, and that's great. We should celebrate that. But why put him on the cover again? It doesn't make any sense. It's like maybe they're trying to promote the game to more people, and they think, oh, Obi's the. I guess it's safe to say he's the biggest and most well-known player in the game, and
I'd say.
maybe NHL 20 didn't do that well, so they were just like, okay, let's put Obi on the cover and let's sell it to a bunch more people. But it's just I don't know. When I saw it, I was excited for the cover. I was like, oh, cool. Let's see who they do. Let's see who they pick. I mean, I like Matthews. I like Matthews' pick. The cover was horrendous. The actual cover, the Matthews blue jersey on like the purple background, that made me want to throw up. PK before that, that was cool. Again, terrible background color. I think it was gold on gold or something. And then Tarasenko before that, or no, McDavid, he was 17. So like they've had some cool players on the cover. So why? And it's not like they're short on players. So why would they pick Ovi? I I I truly have no idea.
Yeah, it definitely goes against all of EA's norms, I guess you could say, when they put an athlete on the cover, which is for every game. But when they pick an athlete, they typically like to go for young and skilled, fast, exciting. Sometimes they look for kind of a bigger personality. Austin Matthews definitely had all that. That I think made sense to me, and it went along with what EA usually does in picking a cover athlete. McDavid obviously was the year before that, then Subban, and you look at those three guys, they're all relative. I mean, Subban's on the older side, but Matthews and McDavid, they're very young. All three of them are exciting. They're fast. Their game is centered around speed and skill. That's what you typically see out of a cover athlete. And Ovechkin, I mean, don't get me wrong, he has the speed and the skill, but
And
he's
he's
already been on
exciting.
it
He's an
once.
exciting player. No,
Oh, he's
no doubt about
absolutely
that. And
exciting.
and he's a marketable player.
Oh yeah, he's a great player. He brings a lot to the game, and yeah, he's absolutely a spectacle every time you get to watch him. But he's just already been on it. He's an older guy. They did have Marty Brodeur on it during his last year, but that was the greatest goaltender ever, arguably retiring. That's a
That's a tip
different
for the cap.
situation. Exactly, exactly. It's funny. It's because if you were gonna make the bold move of putting a guy on the cover for a second time. Obviously, there was Taves, but he won 3 cups. If you were to make that bold move, wouldn't you have logically done it the year after Ovechkin won the cup? But now
You would think so.
he's had these 2 awkward years of just doing his old thing, losing in
Getting
the
eliminated in the
first
first
round.
round.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh, well, now we'll put him on the cover." Even though
Yeah.
I think logically, if they were to make that move of putting him on the cover again, the best time to do it would have been 2 years ago, and I still wouldn't have supported it then. I just think it should be a different guy every year. But yeah, I was very surprised with Ovechkin on the cover.
Well, I saw some jokes online that were like, since Ovechkin got eliminated, they had a lot of time to prepare this cover with him not playing in the playoffs. Um,
Yeah,
but
for real.
since I think both of us are so annoyed with the pick, we're gonna do our own NHL 21 cover athlete snake draft, where if we could pick anybody in the league, who would it be? So it'll go first person picks first, and then the second person picks two in a row, back to the first person for two in a row, and it goes like a nice little snake.
Okay, got you.
So I guess unless you want to go first, I will I will start off with the most obvious one. Easy, easy pick. Young, superstar, exciting, one of the best players in the game, on arguably the best team in the game. Easy peasy, Nathan MacKinnon. I mean, it's
Oh
such an
yeah.
I don't know why they didn't pick him. I don't know why. Maybe he said no. Maybe he said no. But Nathan MacKinnon, that's my first overall draft pick. I'd buy the game before it came out.
Yeah. Um, that's it's one of those ones where it's like maybe it was too obvious. I don't even know.
Maybe it was too
I can't
obvious.
think
Yeah,
of a
maybe.
reason why they. It just seems so perfect. But I mean, hey, I'm not in those discussions. But yeah. Is it my turn?
Yeah.
So I also had McKinnon. I hopefully the
Sorry,
rest of our
that was
lists
that
aren't the
was
same.
pretty
But
obvious. That was pretty
yeah,
obvious. So
that's man, I don't know what to say. Everyone listening to this knows what McKinnon can do. It's insane. Connor McDavid is undoubtedly the best player in the world, but I think McKinnon has slid into that number 2 spot. You know, McDavid still has that extra gear that no one else really has, but McKinnon is certainly, I think, the closest to him in terms of his ability to take the puck from one end to the other. You just always know he's about to make something happen.
which is why I picked him.
My next pick, I really like Zach Werenski. I thought that could have been an interesting one. I like what he offers. I like what Columbus offers. I think they're obviously it's a cliche, but they're a hardworking lunch pail team. You know, they play that old school style where in today's game, a lot of the successful teams like to run their teams off of pure skill and talent, and that's great. But Columbus, they rely on their work ethic, and they have a real good player in Zach Werenski, and he's kind of one of those few stars on that team whose names really jump off the page.
Got a pretty big personality. He's pretty active on like
He plays a lot of Xbox, I think.
yeah, that's what I was going at. He plays a lot of Chell. So he plays a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
Chell. He could be on the cover. I would have liked him over Ovi. I thought he was a little
me
bit
too.
he felt a little bit too obscure thinking about it. But I mean, I think the hockey fan would love it. But if their goal is to reach as wide audience as possible, maybe not, but on
True, there
board.
is that Columbus factor, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's an American. He went to the University of Michigan. He plays in an American as can be city in Columbus. So I don't know. I'd like it.
Should I do the next pick too?
Yeah, you go.
All right, so Jack Eichel. I
Oh,
think
Jack Eichel. Yeah, that was.
I
Oh,
mean,
that was my next one.
obviously, you know, where I'm a Massachusetts kid. He's from Chelmsford, Massachusetts. I love that, but even on a broader scale, I think he just fits the traditional criteria to a T. He's that young, fast, energetic player with that subtle personality to him. I like that kind of cocky demeanor to him. I think he deals well with the media. I just think he's a real good pro. And what I like about Eichel is his long stride. I think it's very distinct. I think you can pick him out in a second. You don't need to see the name on the jersey or the number. He just has that long, effortless stride, but he is so strong from the lower body, and he gets a lot of power, a lot of extension with every single stride he takes. So he really moves out there, even though his legs might not be moving so fast. He just gets so much power behind his strides as he heads up the ice.
Oh, oh, totally. And if you put a Buffalo Saber on the cover, that game would sell. And Buffalo, I don't think there'd be a copy on any shelf of any video game store in the whole upper New York.
No, no, even put him in those new jerseys too, the royal blue.
Yep, you can put them in the New Jerseys. I mean, there's a reason why the only place the World Juniors ever plays, if it's in the U.S., is Buffalo, and because those people are nuts for hockey. If they went with Ovi to try to sell games, I think they should go with Eichel instead because
Yeah.
hasn't been on the cover.
Do you agree with what I said about he has that little subtle bit of confidence to him?
Oh
I
yeah.
like the
Oh
way he
yeah.
handles himself. That kind of
Yeah.
appeals to me. So I just like the way he goes about things. So did I
We'll
hear you
see.
correctly? You had Eichel as one of your picks as well?
I did, but
Okay, you want to go with the next one?
I'm gonna roll with the punches a little bit and change it up. So I'm going with the newest team in the NHL, one of the most exciting teams, hoping this guy stays on the roster enough to be on the cover of this game and they don't pick his partner in crime, if you will. I'm going with Flower. I'm going Marc-Andre Fleury.
Wow.
They haven't had a goalie on since 2014. I think the year before that it might have been '03. It was 14 with Martin Brodeur, '03 with Marty Turco, I think. Guy emerged as a no doubt Hall of Famer since his time in Vegas, going to the Stanley Cup Finals in his first year. He is he's just a beauty. He's just a beauty, and I love the fact that he's backstopping a Vegas team, which has been one of the most elite in the league since they came in to existence. And the color combination, the black and gold on the cover would look
Mm,
sick. It would look sick. So
yep.
Flower, and then from the second pick in a row, we're going to Broadway. And Broadway's biggest star, Artemi Panarin. I thought they weren't going to
Huh.
pick
Yeah.
Russians. I thought they were going to stay away from Russians because they of Tarasenko in 2017. But then they went ahead and picked Ovi, and so we're going back with a Russian, Artemi Panarin. Everybody was like, "Oh, this contract is way too big. He's not gonna live up to it." Now he's making everybody eat crow. He had an unbelievable year. He was a plus 36 on top of having 95 points. The guy's a bona fide superstar. New York, you got the fact that it'll sell because Rangers. There hasn't been. I don't think has there ever been a Rangers player on the cover. I I I don't think
That is a
so.
great question. I can't think of any
I
in the last 10 years.
definitely not the last 10 years. I don't think the last 20, and I don't think that they.
20, yeah, I mean, 20 either, yeah.
So it's time. It's time. No, they haven't had a Ranger, but they've had two Ovechkins. So Artemi Panarin, my third guy.
That is a great pick with Panarin. I think he meets all the criteria of what they typically use as a cover athlete. And I just love what you said about he's an exciting player in the spotlight in New York City. And he has that funny celebration where he does that leg kick. Maybe put that on the cover, something like that. Yeah,
That'd be
I
pretty
think
cool.
Panarin is man, I can't say enough about this guy. He's just so exciting to watch. And one thing I can say is somebody asked Patrick Kane. They said, out of anybody in the league, if you could be on a 2-on-1 with any player, who would it be? And without any hesitation, he said it would absolutely be Artemi Panarin. And I love the way Panarin can set people up, the way his hands move. It's something that you don't really see too much of, even in the skill game that we have today. It's just he's at a level that you just don't see that often. His craftiness, he's so shifty. I love it all.
Yep, and then Chicago traded him to Columbus for Brandon Saad. Getting the
I'll
boys
never
back
forget that.
together, only at the expense of a generational talent. Oh well.
For this last one, it's it's really split between two guys. I know that sounds weird, but Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. I just can't even
You could put
separate the
both of
two.
them. Put both of them.
Yeah, seriously, imagine that. I think Madden did that once, didn't they,
Yeah, they
or
did. They did. They
NCAA or
did.
something?
It was no, it was Madden. It's 2008, I believe, and it was Larry Fitzgerald and Troy Polamalu after they both played in the Super Bowl.
And were they teammates or no?
No, no, no. So
Okay,
Polamalu
then
on the
oh my
Steelers
God,
and
knowing that, I love the idea of Hughes Makar. Imagine that. I mean, I don't think it would happen, but if they wanted to push that envelope and they wanted to put the two athletes on who I think would be unbelievable choices and are definitely going to be contenders for the cover down the line, I think Makar and Hughes, I think that would be pretty sweet. I think that would be awesome.
contenders for the cover and contenders for the Norris sooner rather than later. I would say that would be cool.
Yeah.
They
Oh
haven't.
yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, I think that that's the only game where I think Madden '08 is the only game I can think of where there were two opposite teammates. I was also thinking a little bit about McKinnon and Crosby with the Cole Harbor connection. That might be a little bit hard for people to understand
Right.
if they didn't know that,
It's a
but
good point though. I've actually been to Cole Harbor. It's really cool. Oh, they worship them there. It's small little beach town in Nova Scotia, so it's pretty amazing that I think their population is 25,000 and they had two first overall picks in a span of 8 years. So
I
I
heard
mean,
there's
in a
no
small town of 25,000 people, that's pretty incredible.
I heard that there's no sign for Nathan McKinnon yet, and they asked
There's
him what
not. There's
they
not. There's that. Sorry, continue.
well it says welcome to Cole Harbor, home of Sidney Crosby, and
Right.
uh,
Yep.
and they asked McKinnon whether or not he cared or whether or not he wanted to sign. He said, as I feel like a lot of competitors would. He said, "Yeah, well, as soon as I start winning some Stanley Cups, then, or as soon
Yeah.
as I have as many Stanley Cups as Sid, I can have my own sign."
Right.
I think somebody
Gave the
said like,
hockey answer.
yeah, exactly. Give him the hockey answer. And I think one of the guy
Yeah.
who he was walking with said, well, maybe you can get a street named after you. And he's like, yeah, that'll be all right. I'll
Oh,
take a
he
street.
could very easily get a street named after him. I can tell you that much. They worship both of them, but you're absolutely right. Crosby is the one. He's the one on that sign, and he's a god up there. He's a godlike figure, and that happens when you've won 3 Stanley Cups and you're from a small little I guess you could call it an ocean town in Nova Scotia. Not much different than what you'd see in Maine.
Yep. Well, I mean, another guy that hasn't been on the cover is Crosby. You got to assume that's because he doesn't want to
Yeah, true.
at this point. I mean,
Yeah,
you would think that
he's his
at
own
some
thing.
point you would think at some point EA would ask Crosby whether or not he wants to be on the cover,
Yeah.
um, considering he's the best. He's the best player,
Yep.
most cups, all that good stuff. But
That
for
might
whatever
even be
reason, he
one of those
doesn't want
Martin Brodeur type things where they never did it during his career, but they'll do it when, maybe the year before he retires or something, or maybe even the year after he
to.
retires, just
Maybe,
put him on
yeah,
the cover.
that'd be cool. I'd like to
I
have
mean,
a
I
Chicago
understand,
team
although
on
he's
it.
as good as he is, I don't think I understand why you wouldn't want him on your cover just to he doesn't have that outspoken personality.
Well, I mean,
But
he's
yeah, I
good to
think I think he
kids.
should definitely get it at some point.
Yeah, I just figure he has to have said no at some point, but who knows? No point in speculating whether or not he wants
Yeah.
to or not. In this episode, we talked a little bit about trades that have already happened and guys who could be on the move. One player who's definitely not getting traded is Canadiens winger Max Domi. Max Domi's dad, of course, is Ty Domi, who is the NHL's all-time leader in fights with 333. But here is the story of the very first fight in the first ever game.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite hockey stories. I'm all about these quirky, little not so relevant, but also really cool and really interesting stories. I'm kind of a hockey nerd in that sense. So I'll get started on the first fight ever, which also happened in the first game ever. So the first game ever was played on March 3rd, 1875, at McGill University. For those who don't know, that's kind of like the Harvard of Canada. It's up in Montreal. Very, very prestigious school. It was organized by a McGill student named James Creighton, who was from Nova Scotia, and it was played primarily between rugby players and McGill students. So this is hilarious because this is the first official game in the sense that it was the first time there were scorekeepers, referees, there were fans, there was a set venue where they rented out the ice, and they also had a newspaper advertisement in the days leading up to the game and also the day of the game. So I'm gonna read one real quick. It's real great because it has that old school kind of jargon to it. This was in the Montreal Gazette on the morning of March 3rd. A game of hockey will be played at the Victoria Skating Rink this evening between two nines chosen from among the members. Good fun may be expected, as some of the players are reputed to be exceedingly expert at this game. Some fears have been expressed on the part of intending spectators that accidents were likely to occur through the ball flying about in too lively a manner to the imminent dangers of lookers on, but we understand that the game will be played with a flat circular piece of wood. thus preventing all danger of its leaving the surface of the ice. Subscribers will be admitted on presentation of their tickets. So that was what was in the Montreal Gazette on that morning, and yeah, let me get into it. So there were 9 players per team, as mentioned in that little snippet, and they all played. This is largely based off of rugby, because there's that, and then there's also no forward passes. So this is very similar to what they were used to playing in rugby. And yeah, there was just a lot of people. You couldn't move the puck forward, which, as it mentions, was usually a ball up until this point, and you couldn't lift the puck. So those were all big differences, but for all intents and purposes, it was what we now know as hockey being played officially for the first time. James Creighton's team went on to win the game 2-1. But it really gets interesting when the game ended. So what happened was they played at the Victoria Skating Rink in Montreal. It was on McGill's campus, and this was previously home of what was known as the Montreal Skating Club. So these skaters showed up just before the game ended, and they were livid about the hockey players using their ice because, well, first of all, they didn't like the idea of it becoming a regular thing because it was their ice, but they also thought that excessive playing of hockey would tear up the ice. So things got heated. The hockey players said, no, this is a new sport. We have just as much right to this rink as you. And the figure skaters said, no, we were the first ones here. Then a couple drunk fans happened to get involved. And before you know it, the first ever hockey fight broke out. It was not player versus player. It was players versus fans versus figure skaters in the first game ever. And the game was actually cut short because of that. And according to the Kingston, Ontario Daily British Whig, it was a newspaper. I love this old school way of putting it. They said shins and heads were battered, benches smashed, and the lady spectators fled in confusion. So I think that's just definitely an 1875 way of saying that there was a little bit of
A
a
little bit of a
fight there at
tussle.
that Montreal Victoria skating rink on the night of the first game ever.
And then in 2020, 155 years later, we're still throwing hands today. And some people want to get rid of fighting in hockey. It's as old as the game is.
Yeah, in a very literal sense, it is as old as the game is. Like I said, cut the very first game short. Game ended with a fight and became part of hockey tradition from that very moment.
You got anything else before we wrap it up?
No, just looking forward to watching these playoffs as they really get into it. Fans, no fans, whatever. I mean, hey, it's still we're getting down to the wire here, and it's awesome. I love this time of year. Well, I guess I shouldn't say this time of year because things are different this year, but you know what I mean. I love playoff hockey, and I'm real excited for these last couple rounds.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot better than playoff hockey. Like you said, fans, no fans, April, May, June, or whether or not it's in August and September doesn't really make a whole lot of difference to me. But that's it, and that's all. And we'll be back again sometime soon.